anything can happen in the next 45 minutes. So hold on to your seats, as they say. So just to open up, my name is Paul Higgins. I'm representing the training provider community today in business development, with a focus very predominantly around future growth and innovation. And I will be hosting this and working in collaboration with Jan van Delsen here today. Jan, as the sponsor, would you like to perhaps introduce yourself, sir?
Good afternoon. Assuming that everybody is in the same time zone. Yes, thank you very much. We are Inmisceo. I am the CEO of Inmisceo. It was founded in 2018. And this is my moment of sponsoring, so I can share a slide deck and tell. I only have 77 slides today, so it's really quick. It's really quick. You know my time management, right? Let me just share, maybe not 77, but let's share just a very quick overview of what we actually do, so everybody's on the same page, especially me. Making more training impact. That's what we are about. What is Inmisceo? Inmisceo is Latin for blended or mixed. We do a lot of blended learning for training providers. Our training providers are our customers. We help them with blended learning, with quality of training, with making more impact in training. And that also means different things. And when I say different things, I mean, for example, not just the quality, it also means training impact measurement. And that is exactly what we're going to talk about today. Training impact measurement and also the quantity of training. So getting you more learners. Now, you see some things of what we do there for you. What are our own capabilities? Well, we know a lot about learning transfer, personalized learning, such as adaptivity, memo trainer, which basically means spaced repetition, things that make people learn and help people learn. We also like an evidence-based approach, which is within the business of training community. Evidence-based approach is actually a good example of what we do right here, these webinars. And here you can see a few of the things that we do. Blended learning platform, which is a new spring, which we represent here in the UK and Ireland, some other countries. Measuring training impact. We do content, whether that's bespoke or in libraries, and we do a lot of services and consultancy to help training providers make it work, because it's not about the technology. It's about making it work. We like an evidence-based approach, so we do research, we work with universities, and we like to share that with the community. I mentioned all these things already. Our own impact, what does that mean? Well, we've enabled just over 1.5 million learners already through the training providers that we work with. So we can work at scale. I'll leave it at that for now. So look forward to the rest of the conversation.
Thank you, Jan, very much. Again, I think we're pretty much on time on that. And anyone that's obviously joined any of these events, we know that me and Jan always have to have a bit of a sort of a ping pong, obviously, with time management. So thanks very much for that. So why we're here today then, Jan, is very much, this is obviously another one of the series of the business of training. And I think, you know, the title for me today was quite intriguing, measuring training impact for real. Interesting title. What was the origin behind the title, Jan?
Well, the origin behind the title is that measuring training impact is more and more a topic for not only training companies, but of course it's being asked about by customers. Mm-hmm. What that means is that more and more corporates especially are asking what is the bang for my buck that I get when I pay for training. So this is what we're trying to answer. We started the research on this in 2023, and people have probably been asked these questions. There are a lot of there are some models in the world that people relate to. For example, the Kirkpatrick model, which has 4 levels of what learning means and what levels of learning there are. We can talk about that in a bit. Yeah, there are also other models. There's a gentleman called Will Thalheimer, who also created a bit more extensive model for learning impact and training impact. And in Europe, there are some other people, for example, a lady called Ina Weinbauer, who wrote a great book about what measuring training impact means and how you can do all those things. So this is our topic, not just in the UK, it's around the world. It's been going on for quite a long time. Kirkpatrick, we talk about the 60s, 70s that became a topic. So why haven't we figured this out yet, you would say? Well, we can talk about that in a bit as well. But my question is this a topic actually that, given the number of people that are logging on to this webinar, I think it is a topic that resonates, but maybe somebody in the audience can talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to sort of tail that off in some respects, I go to many of the learning and development sort of conferences as well. And we were finding that, one thing that wasn't really on the agenda was the conversation about impact and how do you measure impact, obviously, both from a training provider perspective and also as an organization. So yeah, to go back to your point there, what we want to do is obviously encourage people to use the tools that are available to ourselves today. So if there are any questions or observations, then please use the chat facility, and I will monitor that with Jan, and then perhaps try to bring one of those or two of those questions at any one time to life, and perhaps you could introduce the bit more of the background behind that, as you've obviously put the question in the chat. So yes, so Jan, I think, today is about everyone having a voice. Please use the chat facilities. So, Jan, talked about the title, but why? From your perspective, let's start with that really hard question. If you don't mind answering that a little bit, and very succinctly, I know in your true fashion.
No, my true fashion is not succinctly. That's going to take it for ages, but I'll try a shorter version.
It was a gentle prompt, but yeah, you know where I'm going with this.
Okay, why? So all my life, working life, I've been in training, e-learning, and learning technologies. Now, every time I was speaking to somebody saying, "Hi, I'm in e-learning," a lot of people would say, "Oh yeah, I've done e-learning." I didn't like it, and most of the time that was because people were doing compliance training, e-learning in a corporate environment, and when you have a bit of experience already, then a lot of compliance training is not a great learning experience. So one of my drivers was, okay, we can improve this, we can do better on that, and we can enable with bringing together neuroscience, how people learn, psychology, latest developments in technology. We can bring that together. So we started doing that in 2018. But then also the topic of, well, how can you do better in measuring that impact? That became more and more of a topic, and that's really something that I stuck into. And in 2023, started researching, well, what can we actually do about that? So that's my why, and here we are. And when I say here we are, we now have a solution for that. We are going to launch that solution, which we call Inmisceo SIP, SIP, on the 23rd of April. So this is you heard it her first kind of webinar.
Well, Jan, thanks for the introduction. I suppose from my point of view, it's this, something that you've just found. Does it have a wider impact, I suppose, into the community? And perhaps it would probably good to perhaps if you could perhaps break it down a little bit more detail for us. Just to sorry, excuse me, I should have got a glass of water before sort of doing this drink, but what I was thinking about though is obviously we talked about why the development and everything like that. You talked about the Kirkpatrick models, but what do you think it really is actually solving? In the world of in the life and the times of a training provider or an instructional designer or a course developer. I'd be interested to get your sort of viewpoint on that.
What's it solving? What are we trying to solve? Let's first start why we are trying to solve it. And I know you asked the question earlier about the why, but while we were doing this research in 2023 that started, we talked to L&D, HR, within companies, and we talked to training providers. Now, we were already working with training providers for many years, so lots of interviews. And what we found is that from the L&D perspective, quite often, actually, in smaller businesses, things like a training needs analysis is already difficult or not always done. Putting it together, training needs analysis for a larger group was also difficult because quite often figuring out what people need for training turned into an interview with them, with individual staff members, and then translating that to training plans. Job taxonomies were quite often really difficult. So what knowledge and skills do you need for a particular job role to be successful in that? All these elements came to the front with our interviews with L&D. And then we talked to training providers. And out of that came that quite often the happy sheet, the survey at the end of the training delivery was the only thing that actually was done with the learner at the end of a training. And quite often nothing much before that training. So no training needs analysis. You walk into a training room, the people in there were not exactly the level of skills and knowledge that you thought they were, or that HR told you they were going to be. And the limited research you could have done or asked the questions that you could have done didn't really prepare you for that. So you're spending a lot of time in a classroom adjusting your story and training to what the actual level is. Mm-hmm. So training providers quite often have a fairly transactional relationship with their customer, which means that the only thing you can do is that survey at the end of the training. But learning impact is actually further down the line. It's not on the day that the training finishes. It's in the months and weeks after that that learning actually is applied within the workplace. Mm-hmm. So these things were quite often not measured. And when you ask L&D, we can measure that as well, they say, yeah, well, actually spend all our budget on the training. We don't have money anymore for measuring the actual thing. So those were the things that we found out, and that's what we're then set out to solve.
Mm-hmm. So I was just thinking aloud, obviously, from my own experiences currently as well here, Jan, is that I was just reading some of the prompts, I think it was from Tina, very much standard compliance training. We have or has little impact in some respects, but I think also it's depending how you look at it. So I'm responsible for a lot of national vocational training. So what we try to do is then to appreciate the individual, where they are and where they want to be in their respective roles. So what we like to try and do is we'd like have a skill scan or something like that, just so we know who is that person, and when we engage with them, what's their pathway going to look like, and what is that going to be, that impact. So I'd be interested to perhaps learn of, appreciate Tina was obviously talking about from a standard compliance, we receive or has little impact. Perhaps Tina, could you perhaps, before we go deep, just bring that to life for me, Tina? So rather than me talk for you.
Hi.
Hi, Tina.
Sorry, I'll put my if I put my video on as well. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, I hope it's all right me catching on to this. I'm actually a secondary teacher, but I want to work with adults a bit more now. But as a teacher, we just tend to have to do, obviously, safeguarding, fire awareness, asbestos awareness, all these kind of training courses. And you just watch a video and then you answer a few questions at the end. And if you ask me a week later what all the different types of asbestos was, I didn't have a clue. Mm-hmm. There's nothing. But I think that's a lot of tick boxing. But also a lot of what you're saying resonates with, I think, a lot of, like when you're saying with teaching strategies as well, is a lot of this idea of checking for understanding, even down the line, recalling, months later, so it is different in a workplace to just in a classroom. But I still think there's quite a lot there that often educators at whatever level don't check back to sort of assess, well, has that been understood? What has been learned? How is that then being seen?
Yeah, no. And I think appreciate, regardless of your where you're coming from. I think that the pain points you're talking about are quite common pain points. So yeah, no, and I see it. Obviously, you know, I work with early entrants, obviously, into say like the construction industry or something like that as well. So I know where you're coming from in that. But yeah, really to think about it from impact in that context. What where do you see that going with yourselves? Obviously, with this announcement, and perhaps how best can you help us?
You're talking
Tina,
to
by
me.
the way.
Yeah, hi.
Thank you, Tina, for the contribution. And I'm going to answer the point, also taking Tina's point, building upon that. Let me just share my screen again. Believe me, this is not a presentation to sell. This is just to explain. So this is Kirkpatrick's model, just to make sure everybody talks about the same thing. So in Kirkpatrick model, you measure reaction to the learning. Well, that's what the survey does, right? The happy, what I call the happy sheet. Then the actual learning happening in the workplace, and that takes a bit more time. And from there, the behavior and the results of the organization. Now, how that works is that training providers, they all do this, measuring reaction. Only some achieve to measure the learning, and then over time learning after a week, yeah, great, but learning knowledge and skills 3 to 6 months later still being applied in an organization, that's actually a bit more rare and more difficult to measure. Then the behavior, so it had a change in behavior, and you talked about compliance training, Tina. That's a lot of compliance training is risk management, certainly in other organizations as well, of course. And risk management is the behavior of the people within the organization leading to particular results of that organization. For example, a result could be we were not sued this year. That's also a result. So this is how that works. Now, how we developed this product around it. Inmisceo SIP. So the training provider survey is there, but we then enable the training provider to do pre and post measurement, so the training needs analysis, and then at regular intervals post training delivery. So a week, a month, 3 months, 6 months later, we ask the same questions to those learners and their managers. So the manager is now involved in the learning of their team members, but they also observe what the behavior change, if any, is actually. And managers also will be able to say what the short to midterm company goals, departmental goals, quite often actually were, and if they were achieved. And that is how we measure how the organizational goals were actually achieved. Now, you might say, if one person does this, that doesn't prove anything. Anybody in this room with a statistics background or maths background will say that. But we're not going for one person. The difference we're making here is that over the longer term, so when hundreds, if not thousands, of training providers are doing this with thousands of learners, we have a lot of data points, and we can start seeing trends of what works, what doesn't work, what gets results in the business, and how do you manage that. So that is what we're trying to do with Inmisceo SIP, because a lot of statistical models will say you need a control group. But the reality in business is, and most organizations, is that there is no control group. If I work in a mid-size organization and they have a sales team of, let's say, 5 people, then I train the sales team of 5 people. There's no control group. There's no other sales team of 5 people that I can see if it actually worked or not, or what the difference was. So we're relying on big data, and that's how Inmisceo SIP works.
Okay, thanks for that. I just want to go to some of the questions here, Jan. Adrian, Ashton, did you want to just bring in your question? Then I'll move it on to Colin and others, if that's okay.
question, maybe it's more of a comment, perhaps, really, about just following on this idea of impact. I think, sort of what Jan's been sharing there kind of shows this thinking about impact as a continuum. I've always started out in kind of quite a quick and dirty way, end of a learning course, saying to people, what are you going to do differently? What's going to change? Rather than just, were you satisfied with the course? Has it achieved the objectives? If there's no tangible change that people are going to commit to, there's been no impact. The challenge is how you capture that and build on it, which is why I'm really kind of interested in this kind of platform and how we explore that.
Yeah, what I was also thinking about, what I've learned, that's too late in the process. You need to do it at the beginning for one point, because then you can look at that impact change. We've done some case studies, I think, in the NHS for that particular question there, Jan. But also, just to bring it alive, there were some other questions in the post. So, Adrian, thank you very much just for giving some little context to that. Colin, would you just bring your sort of viewpoint to the table? You were just talking about it from a coaching and everything like that. Colin, would you like to just bring your statement to life, and would SIP help you? I think is the crux of the question that you posed in the chat.
That's right. Yeah. So my company is providing coaches to organizations, typically sort of 2,000 employees plus. The coaching that we offer spans a whole variety of subjects. Typically, it's around leadership and team and so on. But most importantly, we have found 360-degree feedback to be the best kind of training needs analysis for an individual. Properly managed, it can be transformational. It certainly highlights the areas for development and key strengths which need to be reinforced and maybe even leveraged. But I think the measurement has to lie somewhere around that. If we can identify up front what the objectives are for the learning, then we should be able to find a way to measure if there's been any difference, say after 6 months. I mean, another 360 will help, a repeat 360, but really would love to see whether this tool helps to measure both the cultural as well as the commercial impact. Because, companies that are paying for coaching are asking for this. They want to know what is the return, commercial return on that investment. So yeah, that was really where I'm coming from.
And I do like your points, and I can think back also to some of my previous experiences, especially on the commercial element to it. When you get the feedback, and I speak to the management who booked on the training, and I said, what was the feedback? He said, do you know what? My guys absolutely loved the training. Fantastic. I'm really pleased for that. However, I can't then take that to a manager. I can't do an invert and put that into commercial terms. My guys loved it. It's what is the impact commercially, but also that could be from a sustainability perspective. It could be equally about a resilience element to it, obviously, in the business as well. So it's those sort of metrics that we need to think about as well. But Jan, there's some really interesting points raised there. I just wondered if you could talk to those, please.
Yeah, brilliant points. And this is a great conversation and discussion. I made some notes. So Adrian talked about measuring at the end intent. What are you going to do with this? Well, intent is a great thing, and I don't want to diminish the point, Adrian, not at all. But on the 1st of January, I intend to do a lot better. And some of these things I achieve because I'm well managed, because I told somebody else that I was, for example, wanting to go, in my case, I want to be a better tennis player. That doesn't mean much. I just want to be a little less worse tennis player. And I have a coach, and my partner is telling me every now and then, come on, let's go play tennis. That's a support environment around me, and that really works. So intent to actual action and execution needs some support, and I think that's a good thing. Colin, you talked about coaching, and I really like the 360 part of that, and actually we built some of that into the platform as well. There is a bit of a difference between coaching and training, of course, where coaches tend to have a longer exposure with their customers, so to speak. So I think that definitely is a difference. But if you talk about coaching, training, it is about the pre and the post measurement, isn't it? And I do agree that the 360 method of that is really important in it, just as it is to support, just as it is to have exposure over a longer period of time.
Mm-hmm. And also within inside of that program, I think Tina made quite an interesting point as well around sort of the neurodiversity element to it, as well as knowing obviously of that person's sort of drive, that driven person, and their professionalism, but obviously those other influences. Are there attributes that perhaps we'll build into that as well inside of that profile?
I apologize, Paul. You have to repeat the last sentence again. It fell away.
Okay, I'll try it again. But what I was just thinking about is that inside of perhaps that professional development pathway of I'm here today, want to be there tomorrow, and what influences, what impact does that have on my journey? But equally, what about the other influences an individual, perhaps of those sort of neurodiversity elements to it? Do you have any other influences that will affect, obviously, that progression of an individual or contribute to that journey?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And actually, Dr. Stella Mascarenhas also makes a nice comment here in the chat. Training, learning is not a siloed activity from the learner being able to and being in the right motivation, in the right frame of mind to start with. Learning and training as the two activities, receiving and giving on that is a two-way street. There's lots of support, there's lots of requirements that make learning a good or bad experience. Let's take when you've done the learning, you come back into the workplace and your colleagues tell you, whatever you learned, that's we've done this for 40 years already. We know how it goes. That's not a conducive environment for learning. The manager actually asking, so what did you learn? How are you going to apply that? All the support around it is key. There are lots of different things that you can apply, and I will be the last person to say that any technology is the one answer to what learning and training impact actually means. It's a tool. It helps the process, but it gives you and it gives your customer a good start of and process and framework of working within and making it a better measured process.
Mm-hmm. So what you're saying there, is it very much then tailored to the individual organization? I'm just trying to think about the framework that you have there as well, because, in training, one of the things we talk about is personalization. Do we have anything like that in this proposition, whether it be, very much, well, this is, I think you made the point, we've done this for the last 40 years. We're fine. We know there's no need for change, sort of thing. I've had organizations in that similar mode, and it's really about having more of an expansive, more of a helicopter view, basically, of that organization, and then giving them tools then to realize the opportunity of change, but they need a structured approach to it. So yeah, I'd be interested on your viewpoints really of how it's personalized, how we can give that overview, basically at an organizational level, perhaps.
Yeah, well, it starts with the training provider has been called in to solve a problem. And that means that they have particular specialization quite often. So I could see this manager saying, my team needs training and it needs to be on, you name the topic. And training provider comes in. In our case, training provider gives access, sets up the customer in Inmisceo SIP. The learner adds some of their own questions, because training providers have their own topics, so they have their own questions probably already that kind of pre-qualifies what learners know. And if you don't, you can put them in and invent them right there. The next thing is, and you talked about personalization, once the team member, I'm going to call them the learners, once they put in their job title, we, the system, knows exactly what that relates to as a job role. And that means that we also know what knowledge and skills that person needs to have to be successful in that role. We then give them an opportunity to say, I'm on these different knowledge and skills elements. I'm good or not so good, or actually I know nothing about it. On a scale of 5, we ask them to rate themselves. Now that's a self-assessment. We then also, and this is where Colin's point on the 360 comes in, we then ask the manager, and that could be one, that could be different colleagues as well. We ask the manager to give their opinion on what that learner said. So I'm saying, well, I'm a 2. I'm not so good on this, on presentation techniques. But my manager might say, actually, you're a 1. You're even worse. You need training on this. So the manager has given their opinion. And the manager has also said, well, the departmental goal for this over the next, I don't know, 1, 3, 6 months is to achieve this, that, and the other. Mm-hmm. We actually give already a template of what goals there might be, because it's for quite often a lot of managers, it's quite difficult to define a good, smart goal. So we give them some help in that as well. That's how it works. So it's really personalized, yes.
Mm-hmm. And I wonder if I could bring Julie in at this point, because Julie, I think I can feel some pain points in your comment in the chat. Could you perhaps bring that to life? Because it's what I love about these conversations is making it real life. So perhaps you could just bring your sort of comments in the chat to life, please.
Yeah, I think obviously I come from a slightly different perspective, because we deliver diversity and inclusion training on lots of different subjects. So it's not a teaching somebody health and safety or some sort of vocational type course. It's very much a hearts and minds cultural type of distance we're trying to measure the impact of. And it's very clear where an organization is saying, okay, we have to tick a box, we have to do some D&I training, we'll bring in someone like the Irish Centre for Diversity to deliver some introduction to D&I and maybe a bit of inclusive leadership, and we can tick that box and move on. And it's very clear the difference in terms of the participation of delegates. They're there because they have to sit on a seat and be ticked off. And those that actually driving the change from the top. We actually have a framework, Investors in Diversity framework, which builds on, actually not just what you're doing in terms of have you got the policies, but actually do your leaders actually have inclusive leadership skills, and therefore then do you then as an organisation enhance people's lived experience within the business. So we are looking at, when we are delivering training, we're looking at it within that framework. So we're quite often we do deliver training separately as well from that, but we do see a direct correlation between those that are the senior leaders really aren't bothered, but they do need to tick a box, and those that actually are fully engaged, they're role models, they're attending the training alongside their people, they're actually saying, okay, yeah, this is really great stuff, what are we going to do as an organization? And it's about actually turning the ones that are just doing it for tick boxes to actually recognizing and understanding the positive impact it has on the bottom line. Let's be mercenary about it. Actually, you're in business, you do need to make a profit. You can't employ people if you're not earning money.
Yeah.
D&I isn't opposite to that. D&I is about actually enhancing your business in a way that actually promotes that positivity, and therefore then you get the best people in the business, you get the positive impact on the bottom line. So it's not, we're not separating the two things out, which a lot of conversations are at the minute, but it's actually about role modeling it. And actually, if you have, regardless, actually, I mean, we do D&I training, but regardless of the training, if the senior leaders recognize the value of the training, then the training is probably more likely to have an impact, because they're going to be picking up on what did you learn, how can we cascade that in the organization, how can we develop our business based on those results. That's all part of it. So apologies for the pain coming through my comment, but that's where it comes from, really.
No, I think that was perfectly captured, obviously, what you said there as well. And just very conscious of time, my apologies. I'm just going to bring someone else in as well, just obviously talk about pain points or anything like that. My apologies. You've just got it as HJ in the chat, so I'm not too sure on your first name, but you were just talking about A to E learning solutions or anything like that. Could you perhaps bring your question to the table and just see if this is a good fit, obviously, for the conversation, Haron? I've just seen your email, being very cheeky, put your email in there as well, but good stuff. Haron, are you still with us? And perhaps you could just bring your question to life. If he hasn't, oh, there he is. He's on mute. But yeah, so Haron, if you want to come in, that's be absolutely brilliant. But Jan, what do you think really about where Julie was sort of making some of her comments and observations?
I love the topic of diversity. I did think that. Sorry, I'm going to elaborate on that. Once I've done with this, I think Stella also wanted to say something, so I'd like to give her the opportunity. Julie, Inmisceo is Latin for blended. I mentioned it earlier, but it's also Latin for mixed. And we are very, very proud of being a mixed team. We have all kinds of different backgrounds, and that diversity makes us a much better business. So I have a lot of empathy for your comments there.
Perfect stuff. Yeah. So So shall we bring? Sorry, excuse me. Here, just Stella. Would you like to just come into the fore and just give us some of your experiences? And obviously, Haron obviously made his apologies for he has got mic issues, so I appreciate that. But Stella, would you like to contribute? But yeah, while Stella's sort of
wrong there. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem at all. But yeah, you always do that. But so I think from what we've been discussing, obviously the fact is that, and I think that some of the points that Julie and others have made, I think what we do need to do is move training away from it's a tick box exercise, because when we're looking at it from an organization, from an individual perspective as well, I think we need to sort of move the dial in more into positive sort of solution based proposition around training. So I think last time we were talking about off the shelf training. It's sort of like, does that solve the complete and utter picture? No, but it does contribute to quite a mass of that, of the old sort of Plato 80-20 type of rule. But Jan, obviously from our discussions today, and obviously listen to some of the comments, what do you think we should be thinking about then with this SIP that's obviously coming to market? What do you feel maybe sort of some of the biggest challenges that it can actually help us with as training providers?
I think that on the one hand, for training providers, it makes life easier, because let's say that we did a training, we delivered it, we had a good view of what people wanted beforehand, and then afterwards we get feedback on a regular basis, or continuous data that's coming back to us as a business. So we know what people applied. Now, learning transfer is quite often quoted as about 10 to 20%. In other words, if I've been taught 10 topics in a day, let's say, then 1 or 2, I take those into the workplace. Now, that's not high enough. We can all agree on that, I hope. But we can also agree it will never be 100%. Let's be fair. But if we can get this to 60 to 80% as a regular occurrence of training impact, I think then we've done a great job. And then training providers have a great proof of what the bang for the buck is that they cause. So it's all about showing proof. It's showing how it really affected the people in the business, how it affects the business, and what real impact is made. Instead of statements that are qualitative, really try to quantify what's happening there. On the other hand, also, what happens is that I mentioned a transactional relationship of training providers with their customers earlier. Well, what it now does, if you have that regular input, you can go back to your customer and say, look, we trained you in 10 things. 7 of these really resonated, we can see, but 2 or 3 things actually might not. So why don't we come back for half a day and help you again to just cement those parts? Or if everybody constantly tells you that these 2 things are not sinking in, you could redesign your training. So there's quite a few benefits for training providers themselves to improve. Continuous improvement is always a big thing to make it better with their customers. But they also have an opportunity to become more of a trusted advisor for their customers and with their customers. And I think that's relationship with customers is a big thing. And I think that's a big improvement.
Mm-hmm. And I think what I'm also just reading some of the comments here, it's about evidence-based approach and and case studies. So what are the plans? Obviously, I think some of the work that you've done, we have got some case studies, obviously, about impact and all those sort of things. I think I mentioned it perhaps in the opening of with one of your clients that you work with inside of the NHS about. I think it was some of the points that Adrian made is, the fact is you need to start the measurement at the beginning of the process, not thinking about it retrospectively, because how then can you do incremental impact measurements and everything like that? But is there any sort of plan for case studies? And, be interested to see how you're going to roll this out.
Thank you. Yeah. Actually, we love case studies. Actually, we offer to our customers to write the case study with them. We are currently writing a case study with the University of Westminster, who created a lot of course materials on conflict within organizations and did some research on that, actually. So we're working on that. We also are working on a case study with one of our customers is doing with Walmart. Now, Walmart is a fantastic organization. Because of this case study, I learned they spent $1 billion on training between 2021 and 2026, so over a 5-year period. So beautiful commitment to training their staff, and we're describing how they go on that journey within a particular area. Mm-hmm. So we love doing case studies. When you're our customer, we want to do the case study with you. And when they are really good case studies, yes, we submit them for awards. So our customers win awards. You mentioned the NHS case where the company is called Frontline Communication, and they won silver for blended learning. Yeah, great example. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what I'm thinking about is after this, where I'm thinking about, it'd be good to obviously speak with you back face to face. Did I hear probably in the chat previously to this as well that you're going to be at a conference quite soon? Perhaps we can all meet up. What conference was it and when?
Yeah, excellent. So the official launch of Inmisceo SIP is on 23 April. That's next week already. There is the Learning Technologies exhibition and conference. It's in Excel in London. So for those London-based, actually, I say London-based, a lot of people fly in from all over Europe to go to Learning Technologies. Find us on, we're exhibiting together with our partner Newspring. So find us there, come and see us. And if you want to know what Inmisceo SIP is, talk to us. We'll book you a demonstration, which we can only do after the 23rd of April, because that's the launch date.
Okay, that's been perfect. So we're pretty much on time, Jan. If there's no other questions, or if you've got one line that you just want us to think, yeah, I must catch up with Jan at some point, have you got any lasting sort of comment for us just before we bring this to a close?
I can only thank people for participating and joining today. Thanks for all the contributions. It's really fantastic. That's why we do these things, because we want people to contribute and we want to share what we learned. Contact us if you want to learn more. That's all I can say.
Okay, Jan, thank you so much for the insight to this new innovation that's coming to the market space. Predominantly, obviously, looking at it from a training provider perspective and trainers. I think It's long overdue, so I'm quite excited to see it myself. Obviously, I've read some notes and appreciate, I'm very much in that impact world. So I'll look forward and hopefully can catch you up at the conference very shortly this month as well. Other than that, guys, thank you so much for your contributions. I've enjoyed the chat. As I say, these are events for the community, run by the community, and your insight, your contributions are so valued, and we do appreciate feedback. We'll probably put something on Facebook. Where am I going? It's all social media these days. Probably put something on LinkedIn later. So if you see anything come up with Inmisceo, great to have your comments and points put on there as well to add to the community. Other than that, have a great week. It's a short week, so enjoy the bank holiday ahead, and hopefully we have the sunshine to come with this lovely, glorious meeting that we've had today. Thank you, guys. Speak soon. Thank you,
Paul, for hosting. Fantastic.
No problem.
Bye.
Bye-bye.